At 11:08 a.m., my mother leaned across the molded plastic seats at gate 28, pressed $180 into my palm and said, almost kindly, like reminding me to bring a jacket, "You're staying? We'll be back in 2 weeks." She turned before I could answer. Her new husband lifted a carry-on. His 2 kids skipped toward the priority lane. I sat there with a backpack, a too small suitcase, and a sentence hanging in the air that wasn't a plan so much as a decision made without me. That's the last normal minute I remember. By the time the boarding group numbers started to flip, I understood. This wasn't a surprise change, it was the point. If you're new here, don't blink. This story starts at a gate and ends with a door. My childhood bedroom, left perfectly empty on purpose. Before I tell you how left at gate 28 turned into found my real family, drop a comment with where you're watching from. And if you've ever felt like someone you loved traded you for a seat upgrade, hit like and subscribe. Not because it helps me, it does, but because it pushes this story to the kids sitting at some gate right now thinking it's their fault. My name is Ray. I was 15 the day my mother decided I could manage being nobody's priority for 2 weeks. Once, years ago, it was just me and her in a 1-bedroom on Maple Avenue. Weekends meant swings so high my stomach dropped and lopsided cupcakes that stained our fingers. We had a ritual of cutting coupons at the table while cartoons played too loud. There's a version of that apartment in my head with perfect light and no late fees. Smells like cake mix and lemon pledge. I keep it on a shelf I don't open often. At 8, I came home to my parents sitting on opposite edges of the couch, like a photograph misaligned in its frame. "Sometimes adults stop loving each other," my mother said. It was a line she wore like a necklace, polished from use, not precious because of meaning. Weekend visits with my dad became monthly calls, then holidays, then nothing I could hold. I learned how to set 2 plates, how to be quiet when tips were bad, how to sleep through keys in the lock at 1:13 a.m. Then came Elliot at table 9, perfect tie, heavy watch, a smile that made managers hustle and my mother glow. 6 months later there was a ring that looked like a glittering dare, and 6 weeks after that I was learning the security code to a house with 2 staircases and a walk-in pantry big enough to be a bedroom if you believed in Narnia. The new family came fully furnished. Quinn, 16, effortless, Miles, 12, careful, and an entire calendar of tournaments, recitals, and fundraisers I hadn't earned tickets to. I tried anyway, cheering at tennis, complimenting debate trophies, asking about video games I didn't understand. My mother tried too at first. Then the try turned into talk. Country clubs, ski weeks, a second home near the water, whether I'd look sharp enough for pictures if we did matching outfits this year. In that house, my old life became a punchline. She called Maple Avenue our starter era, and laughed like it was charming instead of the only era I'd felt chosen. I learned the layout of the new kitchen by sound. The soft shuffle of the freezer drawer for smoothie fruit, the sharp clack of stoneware when the good plates came out for Elliot's clients, the whisper of her voice when she said, "Ray, sweetie, let's not bring up that," meaning coupons or late buses or public school. When Elliot announced Bali, my chest punched out an uninvited yes. 2 weeks away might sand down our edges, might let me be more than the wrong piece in their right picture. They took Quinn and Miles shopping for resort appropriate, came home with glossy bags and a new set of inside jokes. I asked about a swimsuit. "Use the blue one," my mother said, meaning last summer's one-piece with the stretched strap, and I said okay like agreement could fix seams. 3 days before the flight I overheard it, through the wedge of their half-closed bedroom door, in tones meant for planning, not for me. "What about arrangements for Ray?" Elliot asked. "All set," my mother said, "the way you say the trash is out. She'll be fine." I stood there with my breath in my throat and told myself I'd misunderstood, that arrangements meant window seats or airport transfers. That's the thing about hope. It will let you lie to yourself in perfect full sentences. Airports are built for motion. If you sit still long enough, the building starts to move around you. Suits, backpacks, strollers, all the lives leaving and arriving. We were a single line in that stream until we split. At check-in, Elliot slid 5 passports across the counter. I waited for mine like a magic trick. The boarding passes printed in a little parade. None had my name. "Excuse me," I said, finding the smile I'd been trained for. "I think one is missing." The agent checked, shook her head. "Only 5 passengers." Elliot's jaw worked once, twice, like he had gum. "Your mother needs to speak with you." She walked me to a corner near a kiosk full of neck pillows and said, "It's better this way." She did it with a voice I recognized from customer service situations. Kind, certain, already dressed for the moment after my answer. Better for who? I asked. Quinn's last year before college, she said. Family time matters. I am family. The sentence sounded like it weighed more when I practiced it in my head. Out loud, it broke in the middle. Don't make a scene, she whispered, glancing at the priority lane. He put the money in my hand. You're mature. You can Uber. There's pizza in the freezer. I don't have a key. Mrs. Adler next door. You didn't tell me. Ray. The way she said my name wasn't a call, it was a closure. She pressed a fast kiss to my temple, like signing for a package she didn't order, and left. Hook beat. 2 to 3 o'clock. Dakikasi Eisen Nettleson Vought. If you've ever watched someone choose a gate over you, listen closely. What came next wasn't revenge. It was a refusal to disappear. Hit like so. This reaches the kids who are sitting in bright chairs under big TVs, convincing themselves they're hard to love. Comment the one sentence you wish you'd heard at your own gate 28. Subscribe, because the middle of this story is where the algorithm tends to drop people. And it's also where everything starts to turn. I sat. People moved. The departure board blinked from boarding to gate closed to departed. The soda I bought to justify the table turned warm. When a security officer asked if I was okay, I said, my ride is late. And he nodded like he had a place to be that wasn't the center of someone's unraveling. At 2:41 p.m. I went to the bathroom and looked in the mirror. My face was the same. That felt rude. I tried calling my mother. Straight to voicemail. I texted, hope the champagne is worth it. Delivered. Not read. I scrolled contacts. The thin roll call of a life transplanted too fast. Dad lived in my phone like a museum piece. Present glass between us. I hadn't called him in 3 years. The last thing I remembered was a birthday message that sounded careful and a box that never made it to our door. I stared at his name until my thumb moved. Rings. 3. I almost hung up. Hello. The sound of someone who used to read me about planets. Dad. The word was more air than voice. Pause. Then, Ray. Like a prayer he didn't expect to work. Are you safe? And I told him, everything. The 5 passports. The $180. The not plan. The way the word mature hurts when it's used to excuse abandonment. She left you at the airport? His voice didn't spike, it settled. Cold, precise concern. Which airport? What gate? Are you near airline staff? North Concourse. Gate 28. I'm by a sandwich place. Stay with people. I'm coming. 3 hours. You don't have to. I'm coming. He paused. Go to the airline desk. Tell them exactly what happened. Put me on speaker with them. Some kindnesses are so sudden they bruise. Airline staff are trained for chaos. They're not trained for 15-year-olds whose parents reset the definition of family in a boarding line, but they try. A manager with a soft scarf led me to a small room with stale cookies, made 3 phone calls like she'd done this before, she had, and said, we'll sit tight together. I texted my mother again. He's coming. No answer. Time stretched. I drifted. A server from a nearby grill slipped in with a milkshake and a look that said, I see you even if no one else is trying. The security officer from earlier did a walk-by, pretending to check a thermostat. The manager printed me a temporary visitor badge for a quiet area and told me she had daughters. Good for you, she said, and I almost broke right there because I didn't do anything except not leave. At 5:52 p.m. the desk phone rang. The manager listened, nodded, and looked at me. He's here, she said. And don't be startled, we're meeting him through the service corridor. It's faster. We walked through a hallway that smelled like coffee filters and jet fuel. Past a door with a glass inset, I saw a small charter. Sleek, not showy, parked a polite distance from the bigger planes. A man came down the stairs. He looked like my dad and like someone time had been busy with. Silver at the temples. A suit cut to do him favors. Eyes I recognized instantly. He didn't reach for me right away. He stopped close enough to catch me if I fell and said, hi, like he was greeting a miracle he didn't want to spook. Hi, I said back, and the 3 years of nothing turned into the kind of hug you can breathe inside. I should have found you sooner, he said into my hair. You tried, I said into his suit. I didn't know that yet. I believed it anyway. On board, it wasn't luxury that felt shocking. It was the quiet. I could hear myself think without bracing for the sound of being inconvenient. A woman with a flight bag offered me water and a blanket and the kind of smile adults give children when they're about to say something truer than polite. She squeezed my shoulder. "Seat belt on for takeoff," she said, and then we were climbing. When we leveled, my dad opened a leather folder. I flinched because I thought this was where the bill came due. What came out instead were copies. Cancelled checks, court stamps, certified letters, the kind of paper trail people make when love gets forced through systems. "I don't want to lead with documents," he said. "But I need you to see I didn't disappear. Money went out every month. Gifts came back. Calls were blocked from numbers I didn't know were blocked. We filed motions, they stalled. I hired 3 agencies to find a current address. All I got were mailers with your name spelled wrong." I flipped. 13 Christmas. 14 birthday. A photo of a science fair certificate printed from a school website. A sticky note. "Proud of you even if I have to be proud from here." My mother said, "I started." "I know what she said," he answered, not angry, just sad. "You were a kid. You believed the person who packed your lunches." We sat with that. He told me where he lives now. Seattle, where the water looks like steel and the hills have their own opinions. He told me what he does. Co-founded a clean energy company and then stayed long enough to have to talk to bankers more than inventors. He told me he has a room for me. "I didn't know how to decorate for a 15-year-old I didn't get to meet," he said, "so I kept it simple. We can change everything. Or nothing. You get to decide." We landed in a night that smelled like rain and ozone. A car waited. The driver said, "Welcome home," the way you say it to people who haven't had one in a while. His place wasn't a mansion pretending to be a hotel. It was glass and wood and light that looked intentional. The ocean was a long blink away. Inside there were shelves with books that had been read and a kitchen that looked like someone uses it more than for display. I kept expecting to bump into rules. All I found were rooms. "This is you," he said, opening a door painted a blue that wasn't an accident. The bed looked like gravity would forgive you in it. A desk faced a window. There was a chair by a lamp made for reading, not for show. On the dresser, a row of boxes wrapped and labeled 13, 14, 15. Sat like a timeline that refused to move on without me. "I didn't know if they were the right things anymore," he said, hand half extended like he might take the boxes back if I needed him to. "They're right," I said even before I opened one. The card inside wasn't long. It didn't pretend. It said, "I'm here. If you need me to be far, I'll wait at far. If you need me to be close, say, now." We ate noodles at the counter, the takeout kind that tastes like choices you get to make yourself. He showed me the door code and the alarm panel and where the extra chargers live. He texted someone named June to add me to the security list and someone named Noah to find me a school counselor who knows the difference between acting out and staying alive. I stood in the shower so long my fingers wrinkled. I put on a soft t-shirt that smelled like a drawer, not a store. I sat on the floor by the window and watched waves exhale. My phone buzzed. I let it go to voicemail. The transcript appeared. "Ray honey, huge misunderstanding. You knew the plan. We talked about independence. Don't be dramatic. Call me when you're ready to be reasonable. Love you. Gaslighting wears perfume." I put the phone face down, crawled into the bed, and for the first time in months I fell asleep before my thoughts could finish their worst-case list. Pancakes are a memory more than a food. Burn them a little and you can time travel. He was in the kitchen at a ridiculous hour, flipping something that didn't look like a circle and didn't need to. "They're not pretty," he said. "They're pancakes," I said. "Pretty is optional." We ate and planned like people who knew planning can be undone but did it anyway. He'd already reached out to a family attorney who specialized in custody and financial misconduct. He said the words, "your choice," so many times I started to believe them. The lawyer's name was Nadia Chin. She had eyes that missed nothing and a tone that made paperwork feel like armor, not weight. "What happened at Gate 28 is abandonment," she said, "not for drama but for the record. And if there were child support shenanigans, we'll unwind those knots too. Ray, your voice matters here. You're not a package to be redirected." "I don't want to ruin her," I said, because it felt important to say something loyal to the person who taught me to double knot my shoes. "We're not here to ruin," Nadia said. "We're here to keep you safe and to correct a set of lies that cost you years with your father." After Nadia left, my dad showed me a drawer with pens that actually worked, and I cried about it because when you've been told you're expensive just by existing, a drawer full of working pens feels like proof you won't be punished for being prepared. At 10:03 a.m. my mother called again. I let it ring out. At 10:05 she texted. You embarrassed me at the airport. Elliot's family asked questions. This could have been avoided if you had cooperated. I watched the words stack into a wall and felt something inside me choose to grow in the other direction. This is where you've paused a video before. Right after the rescue, before the hard part, don't leave. The middle is where the algorithm thinks you're done, but it's the part that taught me how to breathe. Like if the milkshake made you cry. Comment if the drawer of pens did. Subscribe if you want the rest of this in your feed when you need it most. Here's what's next. Lawyers and letters and a return to a house I didn't choose so I could pack a life I didn't buy. A desk drawer with envelopes that rewrote our history. A note I left on a mattress that made my mother sit down when she read it. And a definition of family that survived the courtroom and the holidays and all the small Tuesdays after. But before we go, I want to put this here for the kid at the gate. It wasn't your fault. Mature is not code for parent yourself. You are not dramatic for naming what happened. You don't have to ruin anyone to stop being ruined. When the ocean outside the window caught the sun like it was an old promise, my phone buzzed with a new number. The caller ID just said unknown, but the voice belonged to someone who worked with permits and truth. Ray? She asked carefully. Yes. I'm the county inspector assigned to a certain renovation application your mother's husband filed. Work is paused pending review. I have daughters. Good for you. I said thank you and cried, the kind that doesn't bend you, just empties a little. Then I washed my face, sat at the desk with the working pens, and started writing the second act of a life where you don't beg to be included to keep what's already yours. The inspector's call didn't fix everything. It didn't even fix anything immediate. What it did was adjust the tilt of the world by a degree or two, just enough that when I stood up from the desk the room wasn't spinning. I made tea in a mug that had weight and chipped glaze and a handle you could trust, and I wrote a list with one of the pens that always worked. List 9:22 a.m. Breathe. Lawyer Nadia. Next steps / custody / financial records. School. Transcripts. Counselor schedule. Clothes. Not borrowed, not approved, mine. The house. Go back, collect belongings, take back the story. The letter. Say what needs saying once on paper that won't argue back. Dad. Show him where the soft parts are and try not to apologize for having them. Dad passed the kitchen on his way to the office and saw the list. He didn't add notes. He put his hand on the counter, a quiet steadying, and said, I'll be ready when you are. Then he poured coffee and left me to the kind of silence that lets you decide. By noon, Nadia had texted me a calendar link, 2 PDFs, and the kind of message that makes your spine remember it exists. Moving truck booked. Court papers in motion. You are not alone in any room you walk into from now on. The plan was simple, the way emergency plans are. Direct, boring on purpose. We'd fly back in 3 days while my mother was still out of the country, enter the house legally. I was an official resident on every document she'd ever signed for school. Pack what was mine and leave a note that didn't ask permission. Do you want me there? Dad asked, even though the answer was already yes. Yes, I said. But I need to do the drawers. He nodded like he knew exactly which ones. That afternoon I met the school counselor Nadia recommended. Dr. Patel had a plant in her office that was thriving, which felt like an honest promise. She didn't ask me to recount the airport as a spectacle. She asked me to point to the minute my body realized it was on its own. 2:11 p.m., I said. When the boarding signs flipped. And what did you need at 2:12? She asked. Someone to say, you don't have to make this okay to survive it, I answered, and she made a note and said, we'll practice saying that out loud. She wrote it on a card and slid it across the desk. You don't have to make this okay to survive it. I tucked it into the back of my phone case like a talisman. At a thrift store on the way home, because new didn't have to mean expensive, and because choosing without asking was a muscle I wanted to use, Dad let me roam. I found 2 soft hoodies and a denim jacket with a rip on the sleeve I planned to mend. We bought them without commentary on price, which was the luxury I didn't know how to explain. In the parking lot, the sky opened in that Pacific Northwest way, rain like forgiveness, and we ran to the car laughing, which felt disloyal and also like breathing. That night, I drafted the first sentence of the letter 12 times and hated all of them. Dear Mom was too polite. Mother was too formal. Her first name looked like a dare I wasn't ready to take. In the end, the salutation stayed blank until the rest of the letter told me what to call her. At 10:01 p.m. my mother called again. I let it go. She texted 2 minutes later. You're being manipulated. Elliot says your father is using you to punish me. We can talk when you're calm. Love you. I held the phone up to the light like truth would float to the surface. It didn't. I slid it under the pillow and didn't sleep on it. Day 3 return. Air carries different when you're headed toward the place you were told not to come back to. Dad didn't talk about strategy on the flight. He showed me photos from when I was missing in his life. A birthday cake I never blew out. A tiny pair of sneakers he bought and kept in a box because he didn't know what size I'd be when he saw me next. A screenshot of a shipping tracker that stopped 3 blocks from our old apartment and never updated. Proof of the way love sometimes has to live in spreadsheets. Nadia met us at the airport with another woman in a navy blazer and the kind of competence that makes men blink. This is lured, Nadia said. She'll document with body cam, build chain of custody for personal documents, and hand the movers their inventory list. I had never seen dignity organized into a team before. It looked like relief. The house was exactly as I remembered it. Perfect for real estate photos, bad for belonging. The lawn lined up like soldiers. The front door too heavy for weather, too light for history. Nadia pressed the ring to announce us to the empty. We used my code. The alarm chirped the way a store does when it wants to know if you can afford it. Take your time, Nadia said. Start where you know. I didn't go to my room first. I went to the office. My mother's, with the white desk and the gold stapler and the expensive chair she pretended was ergonomic. The bottom file drawer stuck. It always had. I jimmied it like a safecracker who used to be a kid and found the folders I knew would be there. Divorce, school, medical. And the ones I didn't. Communications, trust me, and a thin plastic wallet labeled receipts. I opened communications and time folded. Copies of letters sent by my dad, stamped, date marked. Returned to sender with explanations that looked official until Lured flipped them and pointed at the same 3 initials scrawled on the back in pen I recognized. My mother's. In the desk drawer, 3rd from the bottom right side under the box of paper clips, I found what I'd come for. A rubber-banded stack of envelopes addressed to me in my father's handwriting, opened at the corner but never delivered. I sat on the floor and read my 13th birthday at 15. The card had a bad pun and a gift card for a bookstore we used to haunt. The 14th had a photo of him standing in front of a ribbon cutting looking like someone who couldn't quite believe his life and didn't want to without me. The 15th said, I'm here if happy feels like too much pressure today. Something inside me unclenched without asking if it was allowed. I placed each envelope face down in a neat line and took a photo. Lured did the same and bagged them like tender evidence. Your property, she said. Your record. Nadia's voice came from the doorway, soft enough not to startle. Do you want to add these to the letter? Or would you rather keep your letter about you? About me, I said, surprised to hear how sure I was. She'll see the rest in court papers. My letter is for the part of me that waited at gates and under door frames and at the bottom of stairs. Nadia nodded. Good. We moved through the house with a precision that felt ceremonial. Not because of the things but because of the choosing. I took clothes that were mine because I bought them with babysitting money. I left the dresses my mother bought to make me match a family photo I wasn't in. I took notebooks that smelled like pencil and truth. I left a sweater that never warmed me. In Quinn's room, bigger than mine always, I found a photo strip of the 2 of us from a summer carnival, both of us mid-laugh. I took it not because it hurt but because it didn't. Because in that 3 seconds, we were just 2 kids with sunburned noses and too much sugar, and I wanted a reminder that even in hostile architecture some moments were mine. In my room the bedspread was smoothed like a hotel imposter. The bulletin board held 2 postcards and a dried flower from a dance I wasn't invited to attend but was allowed to photograph. I sat at the desk and emptied the drawers. Pens that didn't work, a charm bracelet we started and never finished, 2 bus passes, a library card with a crack through the barcode. In the back, tucked behind a wedge of cork, a folded sheet of printer paper with my name in my mother's handwriting. I opened it and read the sentence like it was in another language. Remember to be grateful. No period. No please. Just instruction. I held it to the window and it shone like a transparency. Then I put it under the leg of the desk so it would stop wobbling. A choice petty enough to feel like breath. The movers boxed and listed. Dad carried and didn't comment. He found a crumpled hoodie of mine in the laundry room and put it on his shoulder like a memory that remembered him back. When I went quiet too long, he texted me a single dot. I answered with the same. We were creating a Morse code of presence. By late afternoon, My side of the house looked like a hotel room after checkout. I sat on the bare mattress with the letter on my knees and finally found the salutation. Not, dear. Not her name. Just, to the person who forgot I'm not a lesson. You left me at a gate with cash and a story you wanted me to tell myself. I won't. Here's mine. I wrote the rest without stopping. How I used to count the minutes until she came home and then learned to count the minutes until she left the room. How I tried so hard to fit, I rubbed my edges raw. How being mature doesn't mean I parent myself while you go try on a different life. How I found the envelopes and the bank records in the places where truth got filed under not now. I wrote, I am leaving with my father because I am a child and he acted like a parent when you decided not to. I'm not punishing you by choosing the person who showed up. I'm choosing the person who showed up. I added the part one didn't want to but needed to. There is a version of you I loved without learning it, and I will not hate you to keep loving her. I won't call you mom here because this letter is about the woman who did this, not the one who cut coupons with me. If you ever want to meet me as the mother from Maple Avenue, I'm not promising I'll be ready, but I won't lock the door from the outside. I ended with the sentence Dr. Patel had written on the card, but turned it a degree toward me. I don't have to make this okay to survive it, and I won't pretend it was okay to make you comfortable. I signed it with my name the way I write it on the inside of books I actually want to keep. Nadia read it once, only to make sure I hadn't confessed to crimes of feeling I'd be forced to atone for in triple. She smiled at one line I didn't think was funny. She folded it, placed it square in the center of the mattress, and set my house key next to it. The key looked smaller than I remembered. Ready? Dad asked. Yes, I said and meant it. We walked out. The movers shut the truck. Lourdes sealed the envelope bags. Nadia reset the alarm with the new code her office had filed with the court. We got in the car. I didn't look back at the house because I didn't feel cinematic. I felt tired and very alive. My mother's first message came before we hit the highway. Where are you? This is beyond disrespectful. You're my daughter. You can't just leave like a thief. Call me now. 5 minutes later. I see you took personal documents. Illegal. Return everything immediately or there will be consequences. Nadia from the front seat handed my phone back to me without turning. Type, all items retrieved were mine. Counsel available for further concerns. Then put your phone on Do Not Disturb. I typed it word for word. It felt like slipping on armor that fit. Dad drove. The truck followed. Seattle rose in the distance, a stack of glass and cloud. My phone stayed quiet like a boundary that remembered it was a door, not a swinging one. That night, we ordered pizza and didn't talk about the house. We watched a stupid movie about a dog that solves a mystery because grief and laughter share a wall, and I didn't feel like being careful with where I leaned. When the pizza was gone, I sat on the floor with the envelopes and opened the ones I hadn't yet. I read my father's voice at ages he didn't get to witness. How's algebra? I'm learning to make the pancakes round. If you need me, say, now. I wrote now on a sticky note and put it on the fridge like an inside joke with the universe. Nadia texted at 9:12. Court granted temporary orders. You stay. She can't remove you. Meeting at 10 a.m. tomorrow to file custody. Sleep. I slept. Morning brought practicalities. We went to a tiny office with ugly carpet and a woman behind glass who stamped the papers like she knew which side of the story was heavier. We signed things. Nadia explained things using words like jurisdiction and standing and pattern of conduct and then translated them into, the court understands. You were left. You called your father. He came. That's what matters now. After we went to a diner with mugs that never emptied and hash browns that didn't apologize for being themselves. Dad asked if I wanted to see the office where he works. I said yes, and we walked through a space that looked like it remembered when it was a garage. Whiteboards everywhere. Pictures of turbines and batteries. On one wall, a photo of my dad and some people in hard hats with a mayor. On another, a shelf with models he must have built on a Saturday when he needed to use his hands to think. This is the part you used to tell me about on the phone, I said, surprising both of us. I used to tell the phone about you, he answered. At home, I unpacked boxes into drawers that didn't ask to see a receipt for my heart. I put the photo booth strip with Quinn in the edge of the mirror because truth shouldn't erase everything that didn't hurt. I placed the envelopes in a shoebox and put the shoebox on my shelf like a spine. I hung the jacket from the thrift store and threaded a needle through the rip and started to mend. Sometime in the afternoon, my phone lit up with a number I didn't recognize. The transcript populated. This is Judith Bennett. I represent your father in matters of, I smiled. Nadia had called in a ringer for something. We were building a team like a heist, except we were stealing me back. By evening, the text from my mother shifted tone. Ray, please. Elliot is furious. You humiliated me. We can fix this if you come home. I never meant to hurt you. You know I love you. Answer me. I looked at the word home until it stopped meaning anything. Then I put my phone face down and played a game with Dad on the living room rug where we stacked wooden blocks as high as we could before they fell. The tower crashed. We laughed. The cat from next door walked in like he'd been invited and judged our technique. 2 days later, Nadia knocked with a binder and a look that said progress. Temporary custody is in place with your father as residential parent, she said, flipping to a tab. Your mother may contact you through counsel only until we establish boundaries and a therapeutic plan. Also, she slid a photo across the table. We pulled security stills from the airport. There's no ambiguity. The still captured my mother's body turning away, Elliot already looking toward the priority lane, the kids trying not to watch me watch them. It wasn't cruel, it was worse. It was casual. We'll use this if we need to, Nadia said. But we don't lead with harm here. We lead with the fact that he showed up. I nodded and looked at Dad. He was watching me, not the photo. I had never been someone's point of focus like that for that long without being told to smile. My mother escalated the way people do when they realize their old tools don't work. She tried calling from unknown numbers. She emailed from a new account with a name like Family First 2024. She had a friend message me with the subject line emergency that turned out to be, your mother is crying. This is breaking her. I forwarded everything to Nadia and then went to rinse rice for dinner. My life was not a fire to run into unless I was carrying water. At the end of the week, Nadia asked if I was ready to talk about the cabin. It's not yours, she said gently. You owe it nothing. But the inspector's call means there was a lie big enough to leave footprints. I want to say, I don't care, I said. But a part of me does. Not about the cabin. About the way real things were swallowed to make room for what looked better on paper. We'll care about what you care about, Nadia said simply. The rest is background noise. She explained that permits had been filed listing me as a non-resident minor with no interest, which was a lie both legal and literal. She'd already sent a letter. The county froze the application pending a hearing. It's not revenge, she said. It's a record. Dad made tacos and we ate on the deck with blankets because Seattle likes to pretend it's cold even when it's not. He asked what I wanted for school. I said, a locker, and he laughed and then didn't because he understood I meant a place that opens when I spin the code and belongs to me. He said, we'll make your room a locker you don't need a code for. And then he bought me a shelf from a hardware store and we put it together wrong first and right second. A week passed. Then 10 days. Then 2 weeks. My mother's messages slowed, then went quiet. I didn't trust the quiet. On a Tuesday, the gate camera buzzed. She stood at the entrance, sunglasses on her head like a siren, pressing the intercom as if it were a pain pump. You don't have to do this, Dad said. We can have security send her away. I know, I said. I want to say one sentence that belongs to me. Nadia patched in on video. One sentence, she agreed. Nothing that isn't for you. We opened the gate. She drove in the way people do when they want to prove they belong in places with long driveways. On the porch, she tried to hug me and collided with air. Her eyes darted around, inventorying. The view, the furniture, the absence of apology in how I stood. You look thin, she said, which is how she always said you look like you're not under my control. Then, let's go. Enough of this. This is my house, I said, my one sentence. She blinked. It's his house. It's my house, I said again and watched the sentence make itself true inside me. Because I live here. Because I'm wanted. I didn't add because he showed up. I didn't have to. It hung in the air like a sign we both could read. She tried 100 moves in 10 minutes. Tears, jokes, bargains, history rewriting. Nadia said, counsel only, like a prayer and offense. Dad said, Ray decides, like the ground. My mother said, I did my best. And for once I didn't argue with her definition of best. I just decided it wasn't enough for me to live on. She left without hugging me, which meant she left the way she'd arrived. Her taillights disappeared down the drive. My shoulders dropped a half inch and stayed there. I went inside and opened another box that belonged to me, the one with my sketchbook. I drew the airport seats the way people put their bags on the one next to them so no one sits too close. I drew a gate sign that said boarding and then under it in smaller letters, you. I drew a door and a key and a letter on a mattress and hands holding envelopes that were always meant for me. The county hearing about the cabin wasn't epic. It was paperwork and patience and someone mispronouncing my last name twice. Nadia handled it like a weather pattern she'd already checked the radar for. The permit froze until an adult told the truth under oath. Elliot's team sent a statement that said misunderstanding 6 times. The inspector with daughters testified and didn't smile. That afternoon the inspector called me again. Update for your records, she said. Application is withdrawn. For what it's worth, a lot of us saw your name on the paperwork and we took our time. She paused. Good for you. Good for you, I said back and meant it. Dr. Patel asked me in our next session, what belongs in part 2 of your story that wasn't in part 1? Rooms, I said. Ones that stay mine when I put my things in them. And what doesn't? Begging, I said. Permission. Pretending. Explaining the obvious to people who prefer the complicated lie. We wrote no begging on the card with the first sentence and taped both inside my closet where only I could see them. At dinner, Dad told me a terrible knock-knock joke and then another worse one and shrugged. I didn't get to practice, he said, and we both went quiet the way people do when they step on a bruise accidentally, but the quiet was simple, not sharp. We'll practice now, I said and told him a bad one too. My phone buzzed with a number I didn't know. The transcript populated. Unknown. This is Miles. Can I ask you a dumb question? Did you take the photo strip from Quinn's mirror? He said. Not at you. At everything. I looked at the strip on my mirror. 2 kids laughing in a place where they didn't own any doors. I took a photo of the strip and sent it to the number and typed. I'll send it back. Tell her I kept it because we were real in it. A beat. Miles, Bowie, she'll like that. Also what you did. Good for you. Me good for you too. I put the strip in an envelope and wrote Quinn on the front and addressed it to a house that no longer knew my name as a resident. Dad offered to drop it in the mail. I said I wanted to, and we drove to the little blue box on the corner and I picked it up and let it go. On the way home, the sky was that pink that makes you forgive it for raining all the time. We stopped for ice cream we didn't need and walked on a beach where the wind tried to steal our spoons and failed. I told Dad about the Maple Avenue cupcakes and the coupons and the way the light in that apartment made everything look kinder. He told me about a studio he lived in when he was 23 where the radiator clanked like a drum solo and he thought he'd never afford to replace it. We compared kinds of hunger-like recipes. That night, I slept hard and didn't dream about airports. In the morning, I woke up before my alarm, looked around my room and remembered every object without flinching. I made my own breakfast and burned the toast and ate it anyway because butter forgives a lot. On the desk, the pens worked. The ocean made a noise it has made longer than anyone's bad decision. My phone was quiet. There was school to plan and therapy at 4 and a list on the counter with a line through go back and bring home what's mine and leave the letter. I started part 2 with a sentence about drawers and ended it by opening the door to a Tuesday that didn't require recovery. Between them were envelopes, a mattress, a key, a drive, a court stamp, a joke, and a kid who didn't beg when she could choose. When I think about Gate 28 now, I don't see the backs of my mother's heels. I see the face of the airline manager with the scarf, and the security guard who pretended to check a thermostat, and the server who brought a milkshake she didn't have to, and my father walking downstairs toward me like a decision already made. There are still hearings and holidays and moments where the old story knocks like it's selling something. There's a voicemail I haven't deleted because someday I want to listen without shaking. There's a place inside me that will always look for a gate before a door. But there are also working pens and a shelf we built wrong first, and a room I get to leave messy without risking eviction from affection. And when I forget, there's a card taped inside my closet. You don't have to make this okay to survive it. Under it, in smaller letters in my own handwriting. And you don't have to apologize for surviving it your way. The hearings came first because courts are calendars before they are people. We sat in a room where the carpet was designed to hide coffee spills and the microphones made everything tinny. Nadia spoke in paragraphs that stacked like bricks. Elliot's lawyer said misunderstanding as if it were a disinfectant. My mother wore a soft blouse the color of apology and kept looking toward the door like forgiveness might walk in late. When the clerk swore me in, my voice didn't tremble, it arrived. I said what happened in sentences that fit inside breath. I was left. I called my father. He came. No flourishes, no adjectives. The county inspector testified from a video square, stated that the permit listed me as a non-resident with no interest, and then let silence do the work. The judge, tired, careful, asked me if I felt safe where I lived. I said yes, and felt it in my shoes. Temporary became longer. Longer became the shape of the rest of the year. The order named my father residential parent, set contact with my mother through counsel, and referenced therapy like a bridge someone sensible had built between two cliffs. When the gavel came down, it didn't sound like justice. Sounded like a door latching properly. After we celebrated the only way that made sense. Dad and I stood at the kitchen island and made the roundest pancakes either of us had ever managed. He flipped one too soon and it folded like a letter. I ate that one on purpose. We started a rule without saying it out loud. The ugly ones are ours. Later, I texted Dr. Patel a photo of the first plate and she sent back a thumbs up and, "Food your body recognizes is part of safety." I didn't know that was a sentence I needed until I read it. School gave me a locker that opened on the first try. I slid in a binder, a pencil case with pens that worked, and the card from my closet like a private banner. The first week, I learned the names of 3 kids who looked at me as if I were already real. Zoe held my schedule up to the light and mapped our days in neon highlighter as if we were planning a road trip. Aiden traded me a spiral notebook for the kind of mechanical pencils that make calculus feel less like a dare. Haley asked if she could draw on my plain denim jacket and later handed it back with a tiny stitched comet near the cuff. No one asked me where I'd been. They asked me where I wanted to sit. My mother went quiet, then loud, then quiet again. Through counsel, she requested a mediated session. Nadia prepared me the way a good coach prepares you for rain you're definitely going to play in. Scripts, pauses, exits. In the room, my mother reached for my hands and then remembered herself and folded them in her lap. She said she was sorry and then immediately explained the kind of sorry it was. I didn't argue. I didn't educate. I said, "That hurt," and let it land. The mediator, a woman with the exact right amount of empathy in her eyebrows, redirected each time my mother tried to make the story sound like weather. Something that simply happened to her. By the end, there was a schedule for future calls that I didn't have to answer and a plan for joint therapy that I could walk out of if the floor tilted too steeply. Progress, Nadia said in the elevator, and I didn't disagree. But when we got to the lobby and the doors opened, my body still wanted the nearest gate. "It's okay," I told it. "There's a door. We know how to use those now." Miles texted on a Sunday, "Quinn says thank you for the photo strip." She put it on her bulletin board. Also, she misses the way you make popcorn in a pot, not the microwave. She keeps burning it. I sent back instructions that were really a hug: oil first, 3 test kernels, wait for the pop, then the rest, and a photo of mine in a bowl big enough for both our hands. A minute later he replied, "You were the adult in the room a lot. You shouldn't have had to be." I typed, deleted, typed. "I'm not anymore." He hearted the message like a cent. Holidays arrived like a test and then failed to be one. We didn't perform gratitude. We practiced it. Dad let me be in charge of the menu and I served things that don't look good in magazines. Roasted carrots with too much garlic, mashed potatoes with their skins still on, a pie that broke at the first cut and tasted like relief anyway. We invited people who already knew how to be kind without watching themselves do it. Jordan from Dad's office who jokes with his eyes before his mouth. Ms. Flores from next door who returns borrowed sugar with brownies, Dr. Patel for a plate to take home. Someone, probably me, knocked a glass of cider off the table and no one said a sentence about carelessness. We cleaned it up and kept talking. After dessert, we played a game with paper and pens and invented awards for each other. Best rescue text, champion of leaving early, MVP of remembering water. I made Dad a ribbon out of foil and tape and he wore it the rest of the night like it was the only medal that mattered. I kept the voicemail. I didn't listen to it. I told myself I would know when to press play. Weeks layered into months. The court turned temporary into permanent. Mom's contact, when it came through the structure we'd built. "I'm working on myself," she wrote once and included a photo of a workbook with a title about boundaries that made me laugh out loud alone in my room. Another time she sent a message that had no instructions and it made me set my phone down carefully like it might break into something tender if I moved too fast. "I can't believe I did that to you." She didn't ask for a reply. I didn't send one. I took a picture of the ocean from the deck and saved it in the same folder as the pancakes and the card in the closet and the court stamp. Proof that days can teach without you having to bleed for the lesson. The cabin hearing wound down to a stipulation that used more words than necessary to say. You can't erase a person by pretending they don't live in paperwork. The application was withdrawn. Elliot sent a note through counsel insisting he had never meant to exclude me and then addressed it to a misspelling of my name. I printed it, corrected the spelling in red pen, and filed it in a folder labeled for when I forget. The inspector mailed me a copy of the official notice with a sticky that said simply, "We saw you." I stuck the sticky to my mirror. It looked like a crown if I stood at the right angle. On a gray Tuesday that smelled like rain and pencils, I stood at my locker and watched a kid 2 doors down fumble a combination. He was trying too hard not to cry and therefore failing. "It sticks," I said and showed him the trick, right 2 clicks past the number and back. The door swung open like it had never been difficult. "Thanks," he whispered, eyes bright with the effort of not making a scene. "Happens to everyone," I said, which wasn't true but was kind, and sometimes that's the only way to get to true. That night I finally pressed play. The voicemail was from the week after the airport, recorded from a hotel balcony if the wind sounds were telling the truth. "Ray, this is your mother," she began, formal like a stranger. "I didn't abandon you. It's not fair to say it like that. You need to see the bigger picture." She paused long enough for the sea to speak. "Call me." Then, softer, almost swallowed, a sentence so quiet I had to replay it twice to catch it. "I don't know why I did it that way." I saved the message. I didn't save it because it made her right. I saved it because one day I might want to remember the exact tone a lie makes when it begins to hesitate. There is a kind of anger that crackles and a kind that hums. Mine became the second kind, an electrical boundary that kept the lights on without burning the house down. In therapy, I learned to name it without apologizing for it, to use it to say yes and no the way people say good morning and mean it. Dr. Patel gave me questions for the days my brain wanted to blame me for surviving. Did you make yourself a meal? Did you tell the truth to the part of you that wants a prettier story? Did you ask for help before you were drowning? I started answering out loud. Sometimes in the dairy aisle. Sometimes into the mirror. Sometimes to the cat who had adopted us without paperwork. On the anniversary, Dad and I went back to the airport on purpose. We parked, walked in without baggage, and sat by a window where you can watch people arrive and remember how astonishing it is that they do. We named the small kindnesses out loud. The stranger waving a handmade sign, the toddler in dinosaur pajamas, the couple who held each other's carry-ons like trust, the older woman lip-reading the gate agent and nodding, the ground crew who cheered when a pilot gave them the thumbs up. A plane taxied. We held our own silence the way you hold hands, not tightly, just present. On the way out, we bought 2 overpriced pretzels and didn't finish them. Ritual accomplished. Body listened to. Old story acknowledged and told it could sit outside. Some things stayed complicated. Birthdays were 2 cakes on purpose. One for the kid I was and one for the kid I get to be, and I let myself like both. Quinn mailed me back a Polaroid I didn't remember she'd taken, of the 2 of us on the floor with a puzzle we finished together. On the back she wrote, "You were the only one who didn't move the edge pieces by yourself." I tacked it under the sticky crown on my mirror. Miles sent a photo of popcorn in a dented pot with the caption, "3 test kernels worked." I sent back a gold star gif and then a real one in an envelope because the mail can still be gentle. When I finally agreed to a joint therapy session with my mother, the room was smaller than I expected and the clock ticked too loud. The therapist's chair had a blanket over the back that made me trust her. My mother cried in the first 5 minutes and then stopped like she was afraid of messing up her chance to be seen as remorseful. "I think I wanted something I thought I couldn't have if I had you," she said, and for the first time, it sounded like she was talking to herself and not at me. I didn't absolve her. I didn't punish her. I said, "I live with Dad, and I'm okay, and I'm not ready to call what happened a misunderstanding." At the end, the therapist asked me what I needed right then in that moment as we sat there. I said, "Nothing I can get in this hour," which is maybe the most honest thing I've ever said in a room with tissue boxes. The therapist nodded like I'd done a hard math problem without showing my work. My mother looked at her lap and then at me. "I was wrong," she said, the sentence I had wanted and dreaded in equal measure. It didn't fix anything. It didn't fix nothing. It just sat down between us finally like a guest who'd been invited at the right time. I promised part 2 I'd give you a checklist, and I keep promises now, especially to the kid at gate 28 who needed one. So here is the version that lives in the margins of my notebook, written like instructions for assembling a shelf you'll build wrong first and keep anyway. Find one adult who believes you without squinting. That can be a clerk with a stamp, a counselor with a plant that is thriving, a friend's mom who drives you home without making it a field trip. Eat something with salt. Screenshot everything. Write down what happened as if you are your own witness. Dates help when memory blurs its edges to make you functional. If a person tries to turn your emergency into their performance, leave the room, even if the room is a group chat. Choose 3 people for your phone favorites and tell them they're your 3. That way you don't have to audition your pain every time you need water. Put cash somewhere that is not a secret to you. Learn one recipe you can do by muscle memory. When someone says family, check if they mean obligation or care. If they mean obligation, step back. If they mean care, step closer. Practice saying no in a mirror and then in a doorway and then in a sentence with your name in it. Keep one ridiculous joy within reach at all times. Mine is terrible knock-knock jokes and the exact right number of chocolate chips and batter. Remember that paperwork is a language. Ask someone fluent to translate, and if they charge you kindness instead of money, pay them in both. Don't wait to deserve safety. You don't earn it. You choose it and then you keep choosing it. One evening not long ago, the power flickered in a storm that didn't commit. We lit the candles we keep in a drawer labeled ready and ate soup at the counter with our elbows down because who were we trying to impress? The lights came back and nothing dramatic happened. The bills got paid. The cat returned from judging the hallway. I washed 2 bowls and left 1 spoon for tomorrow on purpose. Dad told a joke so bad it needed a permit and I laughed like the body does when it recognizes home. I went to my room, a declarative sentence I still love to say out loud, and set my phone face down. On the closet door, the card was where I left it. You don't have to make this okay to survive it. Under it, my smaller handwriting, steadier now. And you don't have to apologize for surviving it your way. I added 1 more line, the kind you only write when the pen works and the hand does too. You are not a lesson. You are life. There will be more Tuesdays. There will be hearings and holidays and the occasional knock that sounds like the past selling subscriptions. I'm allowed to let it ring. I'm allowed to answer and hang up. I'm allowed to listen to a voicemail and save it for reasons that make sense only to me. I'm allowed to draw new maps where gates are just places airplanes park and doors are what you choose to open when the people on the other side have earned the right to be there. And when I forget, I will, because bones knit slower than stories. I will look for the crown on my mirror and the shoebox on my shelf and the pancake that folded like a letter we kept anyway. I will call now, and my father will show up even if he's standing 5 feet away because that's what we built. A life where showing up doesn't require an emergency to be valid. If you needed a sign that the worst thing someone did to you is not the only thing you are, let it be this. There is nothing glamorous about learning the combination to your own locker, about buying salt, about showing up to court in a sweater you mended yourself. And yet, that is where the power hides. Not in the cinematic confrontation but in the small, repetitive choosing. In the way a room stays yours even when you leave it messy. In the way a door opens when you turn the handle because you know it belongs to you.